Today on the Big 3 in 30, the Falcons pay Kyle Pitts.
$54 million extension with $36 million guaranteed.
Brendan Sorsby denied by the NFL.
We got some news that obviously the NFL will not be holding the supplemental drafts.
And the Chargers hope to get even better on offense this season.
On offense, the Chargers got a lot better. A lot of changes.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NFL. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NFL starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. The Falcons locked in Kyle Pitts with a new 3-year, $54 million deal after his breakout season last year. Aaron Freeman with Locked On Falcons breaks it down.
You will be the judge ultimately on where you sort of fall on the whole pay Kyle Pitts or not pay Kyle Pitts. But he signed a 3-year, $54 million extension with $36 million guaranteed, making him now the third highest paid tight end in the NFL. We sat here wondering, would Kyle Pitts sign for less than $20 million? The answer is yes, he would, right? Rather than playing out on the franchise tag. And again, we did not see this coming here on the podcast. If you've been an everydayer of this podcast or a sporadic listener, a casual, as some people might call it, of this podcast for the last 6 or 7, months, whatnot, we were sitting here thinking like, oh, Kyle Pitts is definitely going to play out the franchise tag, and then the Falcons will make a decision, an informed decision after the season and whatnot. But the Falcons decided, hey, we don't need to. We already have all the information we want. He's coming off his best season in Atlanta. Right, you can look at the box scores and say, oh, well, he was a little bit more productive as a rookie in 2021. But I think pound for pound, the eyeball test is going to tell you that Kyle Pitts was a more consistent, reliable, and frankly better player in 2025 than he was in 2021. And like I said, we thought he was going to play out this franchise tag. We thought it was a higher probability that Kyle Pitts would get traded at the trade deadline in November than him signing a multi-year extension ahead of the July 15th franchise tag deadline for teams to sign players under the franchise tag to those multi-year extensions, or else basically have to punt on that after that point in time. A lot of that was operating off of the assumption that you've heard me say for several months now here on the podcast, that this year, 2026, is an evaluation year, and Kyle Pitts was part of that evaluation. Is Kyle Pitts worth paying a premium to by giving him a year to evaluate in this offense before making that decision? And it was one of 4 big evaluations, 4 big questions that we had for this team, to pay or not pay Kyle Pitts. What is the situation of the quarterback position? Is Michael Penix the answer? Is Tua the answer? Or do the Falcons have to continue shopping for a new quarterback? How much of a revamp to this offensive line needs to happen over the next few years? Is it a couple of tweaks, starter here or there, or is it a complete overhaul somewhere on that spectrum? And then just, how much more progress can this defense make? How many more of the current pieces on this defense are core long-term pieces, building block pieces that we can presumably build, a potential top 10 defense, perennial top 10 defense out of currently on the roster? Those were kind of the 4 big evaluations that the Falcons needed to be made. And the fact that the Falcons weren't even willing to give it time to evaluate Kyle Pitts this year before paying him certainly is one of the reasons why we're questioning, and certainly something that I did not see coming. And you contrast that with the decisions to pay Bijan Robinson or Drake London, right? Things that we did not question here on the podcast, things that we've been predicting for a number of months and whatnot. And the main reason for that is that Drake and Bijan have shown a level of consistency that you feel very confident about what their floors are in this new offense under this new regime, versus Kyle Pitts, whose, NFL career has been marked by erraticism, inconsistency, those types of things. And, Kyle Pitts has never been a bad player for the Atlanta Falcons, despite what his biggest detractors will say. And I know some people will accuse me of being a big detractor of Kyle Pitts, but if you're an everydayer of this podcast, I have spent a lot of time on this podcast defending Kyle Pitts over the years from some of his detractors that often may be guests, one of whom may be a weekly guest on this podcast. You may know him as the host of Locked On Georgia Tech, Jarvis Davis. So we can't wait to hear what Jarvis has to say about this move. But, Kyle Pitts has never been bad here in Atlanta, but he hasn't always been good. That is a fair statement to say, that he hasn't always been good. He's been mostly solid, but it kind of shifts year to year, week to week, all that sort of stuff. That's kind of been the story of Pitts' career so far. But clearly the Falcons aren't really concerned about that inconsistency. And, they're essentially quadrupling down on this core of players, because now we're sitting here not only going into year 4 of this core group of skill players with Bijan Drake and Kyle Pitts, but now that Kyle is locked up for at least 2 more years, presumably with the $36 million guaranteed being the next 2 years are guaranteed, and then the third year we'll see. The Falcons are, planning on going into, unless they're planning on moving off of Bijan Robinson, which I don't think it's a good case. If you pay Kyle Pitts, you definitely pay Bijan Robinson. I get it. Maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe that's the thing we got wrong as well. But, now you're going into what, 23, 24, 25. Now 26 is year 4, 27, year 5, potentially, if not beyond, of this same group of skill players. And I figured something would have to give, because the Falcons, as we often say on this podcast, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And figured something was going to have to give when it came to this core of skill players. But, to me, this is why we're questioning this move a little bit, because this is certainly in the Terry Fontenot wheelhouse. Figured Ian Cunningham wouldn't do that. He wouldn't be willing to pay this premium for a tight end at this point in time by paying Kyle Pitts. You're arguably paying even a bigger premium today than Terry Fontenot paid when he drafted Kyle Pitts 4th overall. Because at least with the draft, given it's a crapshoot and who knows, right? Anything could happen, right? And so Kyle Pitts could be the Hall of Famer, the Travis Kelce 2.0 back in 2021. One of the arguments I made on this podcast, again, as a vehement Kyle Pitts defender, was that the argument for Kyle Pitts, drafting Kyle Pitts, is he's going to be Travis Kelce 2.0, but instead of getting, 10 years of Travis Kelce's production, you're going to get 12 or 13 years because of how young Kyle Pitts is relative to where Travis Kelce was when he first had his kind of breakout season around age 25, 26 or whatever, and whatnot. And so the Falcons basically spending the money on Kyle Pitts, is basically them saying yeah, we're fine with that. We're willing to pay a premium for a tight end, even though now they have, basically what I'm saying is they have a lot more information on whether or not that's a good bet or not. Again, when you're drafting a player, it's you don't really know. It's a crapshoot, right? The draft. But now you have 5 years of data that give you an informed opinion, and you would think that the Falcons, based off of that information, might go in a different direction. They chose not to. So, is Pitts worth premium money? I think the answer is yes. But is he worth that to the Atlanta Falcons? And that's where the skepticism comes in. And
support for today's episode comes from Square, the business platform that helps sellers become neighborhood favorites. Whether you're gearing up for a busy season or just trying to keep up with everyday demand, Square keeps your business running smoothly, from payments to online orders, inventory, staff, and more. All in one place, so you can focus on your customers, not your to-do list. Square helps businesses simplify the day-to-day while still giving the room to grow. There's a place I hit up near me all the time, and I always notice how fast and painless it is to pay with Square. No fumbling, no waiting. That's what Square is. When you're not juggling 5 different tools just to make a payment and track inventory, you can actually focus on your customers, and that's what makes a neighborhood favorite. Square helps you run your business more smoothly, bringing payments, operations, and insights together in one place so you're ready for whatever is next. Right now, listeners can get up to $200 off Square hardware when you sign up at square.com/go/LockedOnNFL. That's SQUARE.com/go/LockedOnNFL. Get started with Square and build a setup that works the way you do. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Browns will not get a supplemental draft shot at Brendan Sorsby after the NFL shut down that path. Spencer Herman with Locked On Browns sorts through the fallout.
We got some news that obviously the NFL will not be holding a supplemental draft. So we'll still get the scouting report on Brendan Sorsby, but talk more about what this means maybe for his long-term future, how he fits in next year's class as a quarterback. Plus, we'll take a look at this year's rookie class the Browns have, what the expectations should be for some of these new guys. And we haven't had a chance to talk to Scott yet about the Browns quarterback competition. We'll get his thoughts on Shedeur versus Deshaun before we get out of here as well. Scott, appreciate you giving us some time, man. I know we sort of had to pivot here after the news came down that the NFL is basically putting its foot down with Brendan Sorsby and saying, hey, you can't just run from punishment because you did this thing and try to come to the NFL early. They get jurisdiction over whether or not there's a supplemental draft or not. So I don't really think there's another legal battle that he can fight on that one. I think this is just kind of the NFL's decision and it's final. But I know you saw this. And I know we had kind of anticipated talking about it from the standpoint of, will the Browns maybe be interested? And you, I know, felt like that was probably going to be the case, that they'd at least bid something. What was your reaction to seeing the NFL kind of go in the opposite direction and say, yeah, you're not welcome into this club just yet?
Yeah, what's going on, Spence? It's an interesting to say. I mean, I think arguably the most interesting offseason story of a non-NFL player in recent memory.
For sure.
It's just, it's another unexpected turn. I think I was very, very shocked that he got eligibility back, or he was going to come back to college. He was going to be allowed back into college. I honestly was just blown away by that, to be perfectly honest, after everything that professional leagues do to guys who gamble on their own team, let alone just gamble in general. But yeah, I mean, now then he decides to leave, which I guess could have been seen as the right move, in some circles. And now he's not coming to the NFL this coming season, at least. So it's another interesting turn. In terms of options, I think we were kind of talking before, is it CFL? Is it UFL eventually? Because not having, or is it a lower level college, at this point? So I don't know. I think it's big for him. It's unfortunate. I don't know if unfortunate is the right word, but it's weird timing. Because is he going to hook on with another school this late? Is he going to just try to go play somewhat professionally? I don't know. It's a tough break for a guy who almost got bailed out and then almost got a trip right to the NFL. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be interesting to see where what his next move is.
It's interesting too, because obviously he was trying so hard to figure out his future, and it was all happening very fast. And it just felt like the NFL kind of said, yeah, we're not ready to just, willingly accept this. We need time to find out more about everything that you admitted to. We need time to sort of vet this better. We're not just going to grant you access just because you decided you're trying to go to the NFL. And so, like I said, I think a good way to put it is they put their foot down. And it was a pretty emphatic response from the NFL. I mean, so from what you know about his game, what you sort of have seen on film, what was your viewpoint of Sorsby before all this, and how does it maybe change if he's out of football for an entire year where you don't get that tape? Because that is truly on the table here. I don't know what teams are going to be willing to maybe, sign him, add him. Maybe he could go to JUCO, like you mentioned, a lower level school. But if he doesn't get another year of tape, what do you think that sets? What stage does that set in terms of his draft rankings in 2027?
Yeah. So at least in terms of the player evaluation, I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of intriguing and like exciting moments on this film. Like he's one of these guys, one of these like college quarterbacks who can make it happen. Like when there's chaos around him, he doesn't really, or I should say he doesn't necessarily like. Now I'm not saying he doesn't make the best decisions all the time, but I think I was encouraged by how he like didn't seem to panic or like get out of control, like just when things started breaking down. Like he keeps his eyes up when he scrambles out of the pocket, so he looks to throw first, but he's athletic enough and fast enough to take off and make it hurt if the defense gives him the opportunity. I think he has a strong arm, so he can make a lot of the throws. I said athletic, he can extend plays really well. I do think though that the like true quarterbacking traits like accuracy, decision making, pocket presence aren't like always the best. Of sort of very high variance in my opinion. So I think it, like if you look at where like as like with a rookie quarterback or with any quarterback, you want to like feel comfortable with they're like how consistent they'll be, how steady they'll be. And, frankly, I didn't see that as much as you'd want from Sorsby in his film. I think like if there's people saying that like if he stayed in college and then came out for 27, like he could be a first round pick, like, which I guess is potentially true or would have been potentially true. But like, I did not see a first pick not this past year. So I think it was like, in theory, the right move for him to like stay in college if he had been able to. Another year of development would have really helped. Again, like the accuracy and decision making in particular were just like really off for me. Like I think his accuracy or his completion percentage was like 61 point something, which isn't good.
Right.
You gotta get that. You can only live in chaos so much in the NFL and get away with it. Like that's just not how it works at the next level. You can get away with it in college, but like not in the NFL. So I think he would need some time to get better, like in structure and keep his game kind of under control. But again, there are good flashes to be excited about. And I thought like, there definitely was interest. Like all the reports were like all 32 teams were going to go to the pro day.
Yeah.
You're going to see him throw. So I think there's definitely interest, and you would have got bids from a lot of teams. He can't, that's not going to happen now. So like now in terms of looking ahead to next draft, if he doesn't play at all, like that's big. I mean, I don't know. You can only practice so much. You can only throw on air so much, and like get better. I think it will be, I'm sure he's going to have like private workouts, he'll have his own pro day. I don't know if anyone would let him in to be a part of their pro day, but I'm sure like when that time comes, he'll do his own thing. So teams can get a look at him, but like, you can't really keep an eye on him throughout the year. If he's not eligible to play in the NFL next year, like teams aren't really going to spend time on a guy in, November, December, checking in like, hey, how'd you throw today? Like, how was your session? Kind of thing. So like, he's going to have to, if he doesn't find a place to play, that's going to be all on him. He's going to have to stay in shape as best he can and like stay sharp as best he can. We've seen it with, Deshaun with the Browns. Like when you take that much time off, it affects you, especially as a quarterback. So, it's not the best setup for him, unfortunately. And like kind of as we said, like could he go to like CFL and go play there, or could he go play UFL? You see a bunch of guys from UFL from the spring leagues all the time, like end up on practice or on 90-man rosters for training camp. So like, or does he just, use that film from like CFL, UFL, and then go to the draft? Like we'll see. So I think like I would bet he would probably end up playing somewhere, like if it's like JUCO or something. I don't think a JUCO team will have as much concern, about signing him up or getting him on the team. But like, I think he has to play to be able to get better, not only for one, but like actually put himself in the best spot for next year.
We talk about JUCO schools. I started thinking about that show they used to have on Netflix, that Last Chance.
Yeah, right.
I wonder if they'll give him a chance. So before we wrap this conversation, because this basically puts to bed the Brendan Sorsby conversation altogether for the Browns or other teams. But knowing what you know about the Browns internally and your work there for the 10 years you were there, I'm a firm believer, Scott, and like if you don't have an answer at your franchise quarterback, you should always be willing to throw resources at it. So my take in this whole conversation was, hey, if it's me, I'm throwing like a 4th round pick. That's probably as comfortable as I am going, because you can, if it doesn't work out and this guy has a betting issue in his NFL career, you're not sweating losing a 4th round pick, but I'm not going higher than that because day 1 and day 2 picks are too valuable. Do you think the Browns would have thrown some sort of bid in if there was actually going to be a supplemental draft on Brendan Sorsby, or do you think they would have kept their distance and stayed away, especially given what Todd Monken said?
Yeah, Monken's comments, add a little something extra to it, and like how much, if they were to make a bid and get him, like how much that would affect the inner workings. I'm sure AB and Monken would have had that conversation if needed. But I mean, yeah, I would have expected a bid, and I agree with you. Like, I don't think I would have gone. I mean, I think it depends on the team, but like, I don't think I would have gone higher than like a third round pick for him. I think a 4th sounds good. It would have sounded good, like comfortable, for me and for the Browns, like with the extra 4th round pick. Like, as you said, if you miss on a 4th round quarterback, that happens. It's unfortunate, but that happens. So like, you can kind of eat it a little bit easier. I don't think any team should have or would have done like a 1st or 2nd round pick. I think that would be dumb, in all honesty, especially with, what's coming down the line in the class next year. And look, like he if he is able to go play somewhere and get some good film, like he might end up, fitting into the upper echelon of next year's quarterback class. So like it might end up working out in reality, it might end up working out for him. It might end up working out for the teams because they don't have to spend any extra picks, if they're, or at least right now, and to get them. But like, yeah, it's an interesting thing because I think I would have expected a bid, I should say, from the Browns, just like knowing AB, how high it would have been. I don't know, but I think they would have done as much due diligence as possible. And to your point, like if you don't have a quarterback, why not take a shot? Like the idea of like draft a quarterback every year, if you don't have one, and this, could have added another name to the room, now. And like, he might still end up here with Cleveland next year. So, but yeah, I would have expected a bid. Again, I don't know how ambitious or bold AB would have been, but I would have expected a bid. Yeah.
Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports just as it is in business. The Knicks acquired a bunch of pieces from different teams, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, and got everyone pulling in the same direction. It wasn't just one great player or coach. It was a coordinated effort across the entire organization that made it successful. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Chargers believe their offense is better across the board around Justin Herbert. Daniel Wade and David Drogmeyer with Locked On Chargers lay out those upgrades.
On offense, the Chargers got a lot better. A lot of changes up and down most of the position groups, especially on the offensive line. A lot more added depth to that room for sure. And also, I think there's no doubt that the Chargers have one of the most dynamic tight end rooms in the league, and I can't wait to see them unleash it on defenses in 2026.
Yeah, and I'm excited to go through kind of where the roster is today as opposed to where it was exactly 1 year ago, because it is very different, especially offensively, where you see the Mike McDaniel's fingerprints all over it and how they've kind of really overhauled a lot of the parts of this offense, but maybe none looks more different than the Chargers tight end room, especially starting by going and getting Charlie Kolar, making him a priority free agent. Then you go get David Njoku, and then obviously this time last year, we had no idea what Aronde Gadsden the second was. Now we know he's one of the more up-and-coming young pass-catching tight ends in the entire NFL. So you compare that, David, to where they were at this time last year with a tight end room that consisted of Tyler Conklin, who we were talking ourselves into, Will Dissly, Aronde Gadsden the second, who was a healthy scratch the first 2 weeks of the season, and also Tucker Fisk. I mean, it's hard to go, position group as a whole and think that there's anything more upgraded over this past year than the tight end room.
Yeah, it's completely different. And, if you look at the makeup of the room, especially now versus where it was before, you really see the differences in how they're trying to attack on offense, the difference in body types, the difference in athletes, the difference in just the way that these guys go about their business. Very, very different. Will Dissly, very much a guy who fit in your power gap scheme. And then you have Charlie Kolar, who's the replacement, who is much more athletic and also, graded just as well as a run blocker, just in the scheme that he did it in, and which he's now going to continue to do with the Chargers. And now you have two unequivocally dynamic pass-catching tight ends with David Njoku and Aronde Gadsden II. And I don't think we've seen the ceiling for Aronde Gadsden. I think that's the exciting part. You have a really high ceiling and a low floor here with this room. I think it's very dynamic. You have a lot of different things and different ways that you can win on the football field with these guys.
Yeah, I think, high ceiling and a high floor, right?
Yes.
Because it's like, yes. What you're going to get from him. I think that is the nice thing, especially where it comes to David Njoku, because I think you look at it, right, like, and that is the most stark kind of contrast as far as where you see the offense in 2026. Sure. Is the Charlie Kolar signing, because like in a vacuum, you would see someone like Will Dissly, who's well renowned as one of the best run blocking tight ends in the league, and think, okay, well, he would be an asset in a heavy run scheme. It's just not the case, though. I mean, run blocking tight ends come in all shapes and sizes, and the Chargers got a very specific one in Charlie Kolar, and that is the thing. If Charlie Kolar doesn't end up being a great pass catcher, you're okay, because you have Aronde Gadsden, you have David Njoku. If David Njoku doesn't have a huge bounce back year in 2026, you're okay, because you have Aronde Gadsden II and you have Charlie Kolar. That is, I think, where you really kind of see the difference in this group, where you have Aronde Gadsden, who might be more of a specialist, but you made a more well-rounded room, right? You have Charlie Kolar, who is more of a specialist, but you have other guys. And then as far as David Njoku, like, if you can tap into that potential that he has, right, and get him kind of locked in and having it kind of fully focused, snap in, snap out as a run blocker, now all of a sudden you kind of have that all-around dude who has kind of the physical traits to be a giant at the end of the line of scrimmage if he has to be, right, and own that, and also be a monster after the catch in the passing game. So I think you look at this room and it's hard to kind of find a much more well-balanced, tight end room in the entire NFL. Like, there's teams who have better, alpha number one guys, obviously, but man, this is easily the best tight end room of Justin Herbert's career. Which is not saying much, but like we're talking about Justin Herbert having to go into seasons with Will Dissly as his leading kind of tight end candidate, or Gerald Everett for 2 years, or Jared Cook. Like, it's so cool to see them now having this unit, which, like, especially with Mike McDaniel, you trust, like, hey, this is going to be a place where they lean into offensively.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. And I love the fact that with the makeup of this room, there's not any automatic tells that they're going to be passing the ball or they're going to be running the ball, because, obviously Aronde Gadsden, he's someone who is more of a receiving threat, but you don't have to have him on the field at all times. And also you can create some mismatches in that way, but you can also create some mystery. Like, what are they going to do? Yeah. What are they going to have two tight ends on the field, 3 tight ends on the field? And you don't know if they're going to run the ball. You don't know if they're going to pass the ball. You have that element of surprise because these guys have some pretty well-rounded skill sets, including Charlie Kolar, which I feel like is going to have much more of a receiving output than we've seen with his game throughout his NFL career, which again is just going to create some more dynamicism in this Chargers offense in this tight end room.
Yeah, and I think the thing is too is like you have Mike McDaniel, who was with guys like George Kittle in 2021 as the offensive coordinator, where he starts going crazy. Like you have a crazy Jonnu Smith receiver, where he's kind of by default the main receiving option of the Dolphins in 2024, right? But it goes kind of back through his history. Like you can go back to his time with the Texans early as an offensive assistant. You had guys like Owen Daniels putting up 860-yard seasons, right? Like, and you're probably saying, who is that? That's the point.
Yeah.
Like Justin Herbert's never even had a tight end that's had, over 700 yards in his entire career. And I think the thing about Mike McDaniel is you feel like if he thinks the team's best talent is at tight end, you can have faith that he's going to lean into it to find ways to exploit defenses, hopefully, and especially in the red zone, where this team has struggled in years past, right? And you think back to that Miami Chargers game last year, and you have Darren Waller late in the game in a pivotal moment.
Just by himself in the end zone.
By design, right? Because they knew exactly kind of how to attack what the Chargers were doing, and obviously the Chargers were one of the more well-coached defenses in the NFL last year. So I think the sky's the limit for this tight end room. It's deep. It's varied in its skill sets and has guys that can all be high-level players at what they're good at. So
yeah,
let's tack on fullback here, because I think this is another one. It's kind of like tight end, especially with who the Chargers have. Last year in 2025, it was Scott Matlock and Scott Matlock, right? Now in 2026, you have Alec Ingold, who was on a wanted poster, just like Keaton Mitchell was in that Chargers building, right? As far as guys that Mike McDaniel handpicked to bring in and said, please go get me this guy. And this is a room that's also in a much, much better spot. I'm very appreciative of the Chargers going with a tight end that has some experience. I like Scott Matlock enough, but like Alec Ingold, for what this offense needs, is the guy that they needed, and they got him.
Well, you got a fullback to play fullback. What a novel concept, huh? You don't take a defensive lineman that you're trying to transition to be an extra blocker and then to be a fullback, and now you're trying to transition him to be tight end to just try to find a place for him. And
right.
I mean, hey, I'll give Scott Matlock credit for sure. I feel like he definitely got better throughout the year. I feel like his blocks got a little bit better. He was opening up holes a little bit more. But he just isn't really built for the style of offense that Mike McDaniel wants to run, right? You want smaller guys, a little bit quicker, a little more agile, and that's just not a defensive lineman that's turned to be fullback. Now you have somebody who's a true fullback, who's a lot slimmer, but also just has been playing the position at the NFL level for a very, very long time, has intimate knowledge of how this offense is run, can help everybody around him, also can be a threat out of the passing game in the flats, can get you some tough yards. Like, he can just do a lot more. He's just much more well-rounded at the position, and I think it's going to definitely pay dividends for this overhauled Chargers rushing offense.
Agreed. And he's not a cookie cutter fullback, to your point, right? Hitting guys in space, getting out in front on screens, like being an end of the line of scrimmage guy at times, like a tight end, being the guy in motion on a lot of, lead run plays. Like, he is a do-it-all kind of player for this offense. And, like, there's a reason why Kyle Juszczyk has been making a ton of money for the 49ers for a long time, and why they make it a priority to keep bringing him back, right, even if as a fullback. He's the secret sauce, right? Or one of the straws that stirs the drink in San Francisco. Oh, yeah. Definitely feels like Mike McDaniel's telling you Alec Ingold is that same thing for his offense now. So huge upgrade there. It sucks for Scott Matlock, who kind of wanted to transition more to defensive line last year. And they're like, hey, buddy, you're either a fullback or you're nothing.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it's just hard to see him making the roster, in my opinion. But this is another group that the Chargers have upgraded, and it's pretty clear, especially for the offense they're running now.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 NFL. If you follow basketball or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and on campus going up every week, just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 NFL.